One team that I don't think is making the playoffs this year is the Dallas Cowboys. In large part because they are run by the worst owner in sports. That is the title Jerry Jones now owns with Daniel Snyder leaving the NFL. Jerry Jones can now wear the crown of being the worst owner in the NFL. Because he's the only owner I could sit here and truly say he does not prioritize winning. There are plenty of bad owners. David Tepper, Woody Johnson. We can have a long conversation about bad owners in the NFL. While they get most of their decisions wrong, I think the sole motivation for those different owners is to still win. I think they want to win. They just don't know how to make the right decisions in order to win. With Jerry Jones, though, I can confidently tell you, the man doesn't care about winning. He prioritizes headlines over victories. He cares about relevancy more than he cares about winning. And when you have an owner that I think is not only prioritizing the wrong thing, but is actively having a major part in your team's destruction, that to me makes him the worst owner in the NFL. Because what Jerry Jones does in order to make the Cowboys relevant is create controversy. And that controversy runs counter to the Cowboys focusing on winning. Every time Jerry opens his mouth, it's something else. Right? He's talking about Dak's lack of a contract, or Mike McCarthy's future, or now CeeDee Lamb and his contract situation. Anytime Jerry opens his mouth, it mostly leads to negative discussions about the Cowboys, which means then Dak has to answer questions. Mike McCarthy has to answer questions. Other coaches and players have to answer questions. And it distracts from winning. It's not a coincidence. Look at the last 25 years of the Cowboys' history. What have they all... there's like a common thread here. Despite coaches changing and despite players changing, you can generally say the last 25, 30 years, the Dallas Cowboys have been a very good regular season team that always falls short in the postseason. Why is that? Why can you replace the players? Why is it that you can replace the head coach, yet the results for the most part remain the same? I would argue it's because Jerry Jones, his presence, his words, the way he goes about authoring contracts, puts undue pressure on his players and coaches that other teams don't face. You know what they say, right? The old cliche when it comes to pressure. Pressure makes diamonds, but also bursts pipes. And so when you look at the way Jerry Jones talks about players and coaches on his team, he puts pressure. I think that leads the players and coaches to bursting pipes. He does not put his players and coaching staff in a position to succeed, and the pressure in the playoffs exposes those flaws. Because it really is, I'll give JR Sport Brief a lot of credit for this analogy that I like, I'm going to steal here. It's the Dallas Cowboys are the Hunger Games. Every player, every coach is looking over their shoulder. Am I going to get got next? Am I going to get axed next? Because you look around the way Jerry talks, he talks and leaves the door open for anything, for controversy. Could we have a new head coach? We'll see. Perfect example. Week 18, last year. Cowboys getting ready for a big-time playoff run. The regular season has just concluded. Jerry Jones was asked a question about Mike McCarthy's contract situation because this is now the last year of his deal. And entering the playoffs, the biggest time of the season, the part of the year where the Cowboys the last few years have choked, instead of issuing confidence, instead of saying, I'm not worried about that, I'm just worried about winning this playoff game against the Packers, Jerry said when it comes to a contract extension for Mike McCarthy, yeah, we'll see how the playoffs go. Oh, wow, okay. You don't think those comments negatively influenced McCarthy? I would assume they would. He's human. How can they not? Your boss kind of openly talking about your job security and maybe your job depending upon beating the Packers? Now, we obviously know it didn't happen. He ultimately was brought back, but now he's on the last year of his deal. He's a lame duck. And there's a lot of questions about his future going into this year. Dak Prescott, same thing. This is now the second time Dak is entering the final year of his deal with no contract in sight. And it feels like anytime Jerry Jones has talked about Dak's deal, whether it's this year, or whether it's even going back to 2019 and 2020 when Dak's rookie deal was up and they're talking about, giving him a second contract, it felt like pulling teeth for Jerry Jones, where he didn't want to do it. He kind of did it kicking and screaming. How does that make you feel if you're Dak? Where your owner is publicly talking about, I don't know how we feel about it. We'll see. We'll see. No other quarterback in the NFL with the accomplishments and stats that Dak has accumulated in his career has to deal with an uncertain future. Dak's the only one. The only other comparable one here is Kirk Cousins. But to the Vikings' credit, that was not, it was a storyline, don't get me wrong. But you didn't have the Vikings owner out there adding fuel to the fire, adding doubt to Kirk's future. It was quiet. The owner said nothing to get in the way, and Kirk was allowed just to focus on that season before he ultimately left Minnesota to go to Atlanta. No other team in the league has to answer questions the way the Cowboys do because their owners are spouting off nonsense. And the more Jerry talks, the more controversy he creates. He knows it. He's no dummy. He knows the power his words have. And yet he still talks and talks and talks because he knows the attention is good for the brand. But what the attention also does while getting the Cowboys in the news and getting shows like ours to talk about Dallas at an otherwise time you wouldn't be, I think it takes away from winning. When you are constantly having questions circling you, if you're Dak, if you're Mike McCarthy, if you're other players, if you're CeeDee Lamb, about your future, your standing in the organization, how can you truly perform at your best? How can you truly sit there and feel confident going to a big game when you're thinking maybe about, is this game going to define my future here? Can I lose out on money because this one playoff game? Jerry does nothing to quell the unrest. And he also does nothing to stop it because all he does is keep on talking. He knows the power his words have. I think he knows the distraction that he is, truly deep down if you ask him. I think he knows that. But he still does it. Why? Why is he still talking? Why is he having daily press conferences? Why does he have post-game availability? And why does he do like 3 radio shows a day, every day during the season? Because he knows that him talking makes the Cowboys relevant. And even if it takes away from wins, so be it. He doesn't care about winning. And that's why, for me, he's the worst owner in the NFL. And that's why I think this week just was another log to that fire of why Jerry's the worst owner in the NFL. We have not talked about CeeDee Lamb now for a few weeks, right? We talked about it when he first held out of training camp when he didn't show up, saying, I want a new deal, I'm not showing up other than that. We talked about it. We talked about the mistakes the Cowboys have made when it comes to waiting so long. They cost themselves more money, etc. But as things do right in the news cycle refreshes, new stories come about, new storylines pop up, and we move on. And so for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, I don't want to say all was well, but all was quiet on the Cowboys front. Jerry wasn't saying anything too crazy. Dak was practicing, and it was, for the most part, business as usual. And Jerry saw that and said, well, why is nobody talking Cowboys? I'm going to fix that. Opened his mouth the other day to reporters when asked about the status update on a CeeDee Lamb extension. And in case you forget, or in case you missed it, here was Jerry Jones from the other day.
Are you saying there's a sense of urgency as you begin the preseason to get CD done?
No.
No? Why you say that?
I'm I went to high school or I went to college. I don't know why I said it, but I'm just saying I don't know. I don't have a sense of urgency about getting it done.
Because it's a long-standing tradition.
Pick any reason you want. I was at Nobu 2 days ago. Give that as a reason.
I mean, I don't even know what he's talking about, to be honest with you. High school, college, Nobu, what it has to do with the CeeDee Lamb contract, I have no idea. That's honestly a totally different discussion we could dive into for a long time. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. But the big thing here, right, is we have no urgency in getting a CD Lamb deal done. What did that do? Cause a giant firestorm. CD Lamb responds on social media, LOL, immediately. You don't think he felt disrespected? He definitely did. Dak Prescott had to basically talk to reporters after those comments were made by Jerry, and at the end of it said, yeah, I know Jerry's has no sense of urgency to get the deal done, but I do, because I want CD Lamb back on my team. I want him practicing every day. And it's ironic because at the same time Jerry was making those comments you just heard, his son Steven was doing a Doomsday podcast, the name was called the Doomsday Podcast, not doing a podcast on Doomsday. It was the Doomsday Podcast about the Cowboys. He was asked about CeeDee Lamb, and he said, literally as Jerry is saying, we have no urgency to get the deal done, he is saying, things are going well, we're talking, we're getting somewhere. He felt optimistic about a deal getting done, let's say sooner rather than later. Everybody is there picking up and cleaning up the mess that Jerry has made. It caused a stir. It got social media ablaze. CeeDee Lamb, I'm sure, felt disrespected by these comments, which I would say, even though I think a deal is getting done, ultimately CeeDee Lamb will be extended. He will be one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL by the time week 1 comes. So I don't think Jerry's comments the other day derailed an extension from happening. What I do think it did, though, I think it made a deal a little bit harder to get done. I think if you're CD's agents, now I think you play a little bit more hardball than you otherwise would have. That price even may have gone up a little bit because of these comments. Because CD is clearly annoyed, and why wouldn't you be? Imagine your boss, if you're up for an extension, said, yeah, your extension, it's not a priority to me right now. I'm not worried about it. I got no urgency to get that done. You'd be upset too. So anytime Jerry talks, he's pissing off somebody. And it doesn't help the Cowboys whatsoever. And so then even though he was on the Dallas Cowboys radio network earlier today and basically tried to clarify his comments and was like, I meant sense of urgency because he's not playing in the preseason, so we're not missing him in games like this because Dak's not playing and CD's not playing, so he wouldn't be out in these preseason games anyway. All that does, or really all Jerry is doing, is just pissing on a fire. The damage is done, man. The damage he has caused is already done and there's no undoing it. And this is what he constantly does. McCarthy, Dak, CD, other players. All Jerry does is cause a firestorm, cause drama, which causes attention to the Cowboys, which takes away their focus on winning because they're dealing with and answering questions about BS that Jerry spews. He sabotages his own team. And he doesn't stop because all he does is continue to say yes and yes and yes to any press conference he is offered. So he is not only sabotaging his own team by the words he utters daily and weekly, he also does so knowingly. The guy's a great businessman. Say what you want about his ability to be a GM and pick the players and organize a salary cap. He is an elite businessman, a tremendous marketer. He knows how to get the Cowboys on the back page. He knows how to get the headlines for Dallas. He knows how to keep the spotlight and attention on his team. But most times when he does that, it is in a negative, distraction-causing way that only makes it harder for the Cowboys coaching staff and players to focus on winning. That is part of the reason why I think you see come playoff time, this team fold every year despite strong regular seasons. And it's why the Cowboys cannot be taken seriously as a team until Jerry eventually gives up ownership, takes a back seat. And so not only being the root of the cause, but also consciously being the root of the cause, for me, makes Jerry Jones the worst owner in the NFL.